The Dallas-Fort Worth community always says yes to supporting elementary students, and now that yes can win you a brand new 2022 truck. DFW Yes provides school supplies to more than 78,000 students across Texas. Give your yes today by purchasing raffle tickets in our Drive Away for Education truck raffle sponsored by Thomas J. Henry. The grand prize winner will choose from a new Ram, Chevrolet, GMC, Ford, or Nissan truck. Plus, you could win a shopping spree or gas card. Purchase your raffle ticket today at dfwyes.org.
Let's get to the big game.
Let's do it, man.
Let's just go right into
a national title damn preview.
First off, that Michigan TCU game, top 5 game I've ever covered in my life.
I was about to say.
I bet it was.
And it was the second best semifinal of the day.
Right, that's insane. We've never had two. We've never had two.
We
so
wouldn't
far
have
in
to
the
deal with
era.
this expansion if this would have been the case the whole time. People would have been
I
like, yeah, no,
know.
this is perfect.
I know. I hated that. So Craven, first let's actually talk.
We're gonna get more Alabama Kansas State games with the expansion than
Right.
God, you're right.
Right,
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Craven, let's talk about that game real quick because right off the bat, it looked like TCU. I don't say was going to run away with it, but it looked like they shell-shocked Michigan right away.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, this is what this game could – like I wouldn't
Yeah.
have been shocked if it was 28-10, right, the final score.
You know where this game changed for me?
Yeah.
The first drive Michigan had, and they go, 50 yards on the first play, just running right up the middle, and you're like, oh, no.
Yeah, you were like,
Right.
oh,
man,
that's their backup
Michigan's
running
about
back.
to pound this team.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes later, it's 4th and 2 on the goal line, and Jim Harbaugh decides to go Philly special trick play.
That was awful.
And I think everybody on the TCU's defense went, oh, man, we got him.
Mm-hmm.
And for the rest of that game, until it just broke open into crazy pants banana stuff in the second half, Joe Gillespie worked Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Right? The former Stephenville High School head coach worked the future NFL guy, the guy who's coaching a Super Bowl and that kind of stuff. 2 pick sixes. They were useless in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had 3 trips.
Another turnover.
Right, 2 turnovers
Their
in the
next
red.
trip to the red zone was the turnover.
They went to the red zone 3 times in the first half and came out with 3 points total. And that was 3 goal-to-go situations.
Yep.
TCU scored 2 defensive touchdowns. Just an absolute masterclass. And I just think, we kind of watched it. Ari Wasserman pointed it out when Ohio State and Michigan played, when Ohio State punted that on that plus field, and then it just went downhill from there.
Right.
Because you can feel it as a team.
Yeah.
All year long, Michigan's been pounding people.
Yep.
And all week long, they talked about how the 3-3-5 is soft.
Right.
And if they line up in that, there's going to be a lot of run play and all this kind of stuff. And they had a chance, 4th and goal, to just run straight up the middle and prove that they are the tougher team, the more physical team, and this is what this next 60 minutes is going to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, they punked out.
Yeah.
And I think that raised the confidence level of TCU so much. Then they're able to go get some points and score and get a lead. And then that series in the third quarter, because let's remember here, there was 27 points scored in the first half.
Yeah.
There was 44 points scored in the third quarter.
I was about to say that. Here's how I experienced
That's the
that
best
game.
quarter of football I've ever seen in my life.
Here's how I experienced that game. I inadvertently took a nap for 5 minutes in the middle because I was I planned a nap at halftime, and I was like, I'm gonna take a nap at halftime. It's always 30 minutes long anyway. And I woke up in the middle of third quarter. I was like, wait, what happened? I was like, oh my God. And
You woke up in another dimension.
Usually I'm slow to get up from a nap, but I shot up and I was like, oh, let me get everything ready and make sure to watch this final half because it exploded, like you mentioned.
The last from 6:32 to the end of until 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Let's just go through this. Michigan scores on a 34-yard touchdown pass. With 4:25, TCU responds with a 1-yard run. 2:52 left in the third quarter. D. Winters, interception return for a touchdown. 1:47, J.J. McCarthy run for a touchdown. 49 seconds left, Max Duggan 1 yard for a touchdown. 3 seconds left, Michigan 1 yard for a touchdown. 14:13 left in the fourth quarter, another Michigan rushing touchdown. And then 13:07, Quentin Johnson with that 76-yard touchdown pass.
My God.
It was just – it was crack cocaine.
Yeah.
You were just sitting there huh?
I'm
As a person who used to keep stats at high school games,
Right. Oh my
I
God,
was
you're
so
just-
thankful for stat broadcasts
yeah.
because you could just watch it.
Right.
I'm just shocked that how offense heavy that this game was.
Sure.
Because all year Michigan has been such a defense. I mean, their offense has been good. J.J. McCarthy has been good, but I don't think they have been defined at all this year really by their offense. It's been their defense, that defensive front, defensive line, edge rushing. That's what they've been defined by. And TCU made them look crappy.
They heard it all week.
I
I was
mean,
about to say,
Like I was
That's
there.
right, you're
I was
correct.
there, and every question to TCU from a media person that wasn't Texas based was, "How are you going to handle the physicality of Michigan?
Yeah.
How are you going to handle the toughness of like
the
it was
size,
it
and
was
the
all
pass rush,
like
and
the 3-3-5, like it was all basically just like, are y'all man enough to go play with? That's what it
Right.
was.
Right.
And like those are dudes that are prideful.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to go out there and show, who they were. And Paul Gonzalez, the safeties coach at TCU, while we're kind of gathered in the media area after the game, he walks by and goes, "When you write, let them know what conference we play in."
Yeah.
Because they were disrespected at every turn. Their style of play, their scheme of play, the conference that they play in. And you could tell by the time Michigan realized, like, oh, man, this is a football game.
Right.
It was too late.
Mm-hmm.
And they spotted TCU a 14-point lead. TCU won by 6.
Yeah.
And so, I think if they play 10 times, Michigan is the better team. But that's not what college football is.
I was about to say, yeah.
And TCU got them at the right time, and that was a team that was playing with nothing to lose, that felt disrespected all week. And they're going to have to manufacture that again this week.
right,
Like-
because the same exact thing's happening.
Right, and
The
Sonny
noise
said
is
it after the
loud.
game. Sonny was like, somebody asked him about the disrespect thing, and he goes, and he used that phrase. He goes, that crap's not going to stop
Right.
for the next
No.
10 days. We're just going to hear the exact same stuff again.
Yeah, there's
I'd
people-
imagine Georgia's smarter about saying it out loud.
Right.
Yeah,
Like the players and stuff are going to remember what conference they play in, and
Mhm.
they're probably not going to be so quick to talk about the scheme and stuff. But everybody thinks the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The gambling line is 13.5.
Yeah. I was about to say, for
And
a
it's
national
13.5. They gave it at 13.5, so you'll bet TCU
title. Yeah.
right.
to get money even.
Mhm.
You see Mattress Mac put $1.5 million
Sure.
to TCU.
Why not?
With the
man?
points, or just a win straight up.
I think just to win straight up.
That's insane. That's you might as well just.
Yeah, I need to double check that, but I think just to
Can you
win
imagine
straight
being
up,
that
you bet
rich?
1.5 million. I know, just to throw it out there and be like, "Yo, I believe in you," sort of. Here's
Yeah,
$1.5
that would
million
turn into about $7 million. So I
Right.
mean,
Not wild,
So, like,
crazy.
let's talk about the game. Let's talk about the preview now, the game to be, because then you mentioned it. Later that night, we saw Michigan, Ohio, or the next day, I should say.
No, it was later that night.
Yeah, later that
it
night.
just felt like that
Right,
because
so
like
long. Michigan or Georgia and Ohio State played, and in another classic, and I think I was watching this game, and once Georgia won that game, it's hard for me to say this, but I felt better about TCU against Georgia.
really.
Yes,
That's
I felt
fascinating.
I felt the opposite.
So I know a lot of people are going to feel like that was Georgia's hiccup, right?
Mhm.
Georgia,
Yeah.
they were facing a Marvin Harrison Jr., right, and they couldn't cover him, sure, things like that. I think just something to Georgia struggling with quarterbacks who can improvise.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did not think Ohio State would be able to do, I didn't think C.J. Stroud would be good at improvising. And he was a lot better in that game than I think he'd ever been. That's how Michigan beat him. That's how every time he struggled, that's how Michigan beat him last year. C.J. Stroud's very much a script quarterback. If everything's gone to plan, boom, 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 boom. That was the first game I've ever seen him have to make a run when he doesn't want to, have to make a throw when he doesn't want to, or that's not his first or second read, things like that. And in that game, I was like, Georgia wasn't ready for that. Now, the counter to that would be they should be ready for
They
that
should
against
be
Max
ready.
Duggan
Yep,
because
there you go.
C.J. Stroud hadn't shown that, and Max Duggan can. But I go back to that LSU game a little bit where Jaden Daniels had a little bit of success for this versus them. I go back to that Bryce Young game last year where Bryce Young was able to give them some struggles. I still take Georgia outright because I think that defense is too much, especially potentially without Kendra Miller, right?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be massive. But I
Was
will
he
say
for sure ruled out?
He's questionable.
He's questionable. I didn't know
so,
if it
but
was.
still, that's going to be
He's not going to be at his
I was
best,
about to say,
right?
at
They're
this
not
point,
going
you're
to
probably
give
looking
him
at 80%
30
Kendra Miller.
plus
He's going to
catches.
suit
Yeah.
up and give it a go, I'd imagine. But it's
Yeah.
going to be like the second half where he played the first drive and he just
Right.
couldn't go.
Right.
So I feel better. I don't feel great because I think this is the worst matchup. When TCU drew Michigan in the playoff, I was like, cool, they got the matchup they wanted.
Yes.
Right. This is not the matchup they wanted. They definitely probably were cheering for Ohio State
yeah.
in that
100%.
game.
Yes.
But I feel better because I do think Max Duggan is the type of quarterback to give them trouble. I don't think he'll throw for 300 yards and run for 150. But what I'm saying is he could sneak around and all of a sudden, like, Georgia forgets about him and it's like, wait, why is he getting 30 yards, right? Because we're not expecting
Yeah.
I'm just thinking they could kind of finagle some things out of this game.
I'm going to scheme Dorcas a little bit here.
Go for it.
What I worry about, TCU's offensive line is pretty good.
Yeah.
They're excellent guard to guard.
Yeah.
They are average at the tackle position.
Mm.
Michigan's best 2 defensive players were the defensive tackles. So that was a strength-on-strength matchup. You could scheme your way around it. And that running game had a lot. DeMarcado had 150 yards rushing as a backup in that game, right? They ran the ball a lot. Georgia has defensive ends that Michigan does not.
I was about to say, yeah.
They've got a whole defensive line.
Right.
that
Well,
Michigan
and those
had.
ends are really, really good. And so if you're Garrett Riley, do you use a linebacker? Do you use a tight end to help with the defensive end? Do you use a tailback to help with the defensive end? Do you just spread them all the way out and then go quick game, right? Because they struggled against Texas and their defensive ends.
Sure, that's true.
And these Georgia defensive ends are, 3 or 4 rounds better in the NFL draft than those Texas ones were. And so that's the matchup to me that concerns me the most. How does TCU block the defensive ends of Georgia? And by doing so, what do they have to sacrifice? Is it a running back in the passing game? Is it a slot receiver that has to become a tight end that stays, that chips? Is it not doing the vertical down the threat stuff to Quentin Johnston because you just don't have that kind of time?
Sure.
What do you give up to block those defensive ends? Because it's going to take 30, 40 points to win this game. You're not going to win this game 24-17, I don't think. You're just not going to do it. Georgia's going to score some points. We think of TCU as the offensive team, Georgia as the defensive team. Georgia averages about the same points per game.
This isn't the same
39.4 points per game. Right.
This
so
isn't the
right
same
there.
Stetson Bennett as we were questioning.
They just
last
beat
year.
Ohio State in a shootout.
Yeah.
So you're not going to win this 14-7. You're going to have to score some points.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that if your tackles can't handle the edge pressure of Georgia?
Yeah. I mean, you're facing Jalen Carter, who's going to be a top 5 pick probably. It's probably up to him or Tyree Wilson in terms of like the first lineman off the board.
Yeah.
Probably their front seven, like most of their front seven's probably going to go first round. So yeah, it's going to be. I think we're going to see a lot of creativity because twice in that Michigan game, and I will be stunned if we don't see this again. Twice in that Michigan game, Garrett Riley called that shallow screen, and that scored twice. Right, one of them was in the I forgot who it was to in the red zone, but it was in Max Duggan. It looked like he had nowhere to throw, and he kind of underthrew it, or not underthrew, but kind of underarmed it, and the receiver was there, shallow screen behind the line of scrimmage, touchdown, and then of course the second one was to Quentin Johnston. Yeah. We're gonna see that play. I would hope no less than like 5 times because they're going to need to absorb that pressure and have them think that Quentin Johnston sneak around, find something to get him open because, man, this secondary, they're not last year's secondary. They're not as excellent, right? As
they don't have Lewis sign and stuff.
Right. But they're still a Georgia secondary.
If you would like a one-on-one football matchup to watch in this game, Quentin Johnston versus Keely Ringo.
Yes. Fantastic, man. That's going to be – I'm telling you, they need Skycam. Like ESPN Watch or whatever, they need a Skycam view because you should be able to see the matchups. That's what I was pissed about during Ohio State, Georgia, when I was watching those receivers go against that secondary. I was like, I want to see those matchups go at it. But, yes, 100%. I think they're going to find some creative ways to get Quentin Johnston open with that shallow screen because they're going to need to. I don't know how every team seems to lose where Quentin Johnston is. It happened against Michigan where he's just deep and all of a sudden he's wide open. Georgia's the one team I'm going to guarantee that's not going to happen against, right? Where it's going to be like there's not going to be a confusion in coverage or whatever, and he's going to be wide open, right? They're going to have bracket coverage on that dude every time he steps past the first down marker. So
does it concern you or give you more confidence that they were able to beat Georgia with Max Duggan going 14 of 29 with 2 interceptions? Because, like, my thing is, like, they beat Michigan with him completing under 50% of his passes and throwing 2 picks. And, like, on one hand, you can go, look, man, they just beat an undefeated Big Ten champion without their quarterback playing all that well through the air. On the other hand, you're like, well, they can't do that against Georgia. Like, he's going to have a better day than that because you're not going to run the ball like that against a Kirby Smart defense.
Right.
He'll put 14 people in the box.
Yeah. Right.
Like, he'll put himself in the box.
Right.
Like, you're not going to do that against Georgia. They'll go down losing, but, like, it won't be because you just, like, pound on them or whatever.
That's a good point.
And TCU did that. They had 41 carries for 273 yards. Like, they pounded on them. They only threw the ball 29 times.
Yeah.
And so –
and, of course, you can also look at the fact they got 2 defensive touchdowns.
Right, 2 defensive touchdowns. 3 rushing touchdowns. That's 5, right? this one feels like a Max Duggan game. Like
It has
this,
to. Yeah, it
this
feels like it
has
has
to
to
be.
Yep.
And he wasn't all that great against Kansas State.
Nope.
He played well late to kind of get him back in there, but he missed a lot of throws.
Mhm.
And he missed a lot of throws against Michigan.
He did.
And so he's going to have to kind of come back to that middle of the year, end of the year run, Max Duggan, where he was doing everything, because it's going to take a Herculean type effort from him to beat this Georgia team.
I think so. I think that, especially with Kendra Miller out
Right,
potentially, or
right.
definitely not 100%.
You're going to rely on him for a lot of the run game, too. Yeah.
I mean, Amari DiMarcato did a great job, right? He had that big run in the second half, but obviously that putting that all on him against anybody, right? If he starts against Michigan and he's the only guy, they're probably not going to have the same success in the run game against them. But yeah, it's gonna have to be a Max Duggan affair. And again, that's why I go back to like why I feel a little slightly better, is because he's at his best when he can freelance a little bit, right? When the pocket breaks down a little bit, he can step outside and he can either choose to make that 5-yard run or dump it off or whatever. He's known to be good in those situations. The challenge for them will be those downs where he's not asked to improvise, right? Can he look at the field as is, see a matchup, trust his guy to make that, and then trust his arm to make a throw, right? Because if he's not thinking about it too much, boom, wheeling, dealing, you take what you get, right? If he throws a pick, he throws a pick. If he throws a 60-yard bomb, he throws a 60-yard bomb. But to me, it's when those moments aren't happening, right? When the pocket may be a little cleaner and he sees a throw that maybe is what I call a big boy throw, right? Stetson Bennett made some big boy throws late in that game for Georgia, right? Some of those throws, I guarantee you, go look at that last drive from Stetson Bennett. Max Duggan's going to have to make some of those type of throws where the window is seconds, and that's going to be the difference. And so
he's got to be like C.J. Stroud was.
Exactly.
He's gonna have to play that kind of game.
Yeah, he's going to have to play that kind of game. So, man, let's just say this. We didn't expect him to be here, right? At the beginning of the year, if you would have told us one team from this state was playing for a national title, we probably would have been like, A&M had a pretty good year,
Texas
huh?
A&M, yeah.
Right? Like, it was like, man, A&M did it, huh? Or like Quinn
Texas.
Ewers took the world by storm, right?
I guess my pick would have been like Houston went undefeated.
Oh, sure, yeah. That's the other one, right? Houston, man, they did it. They broke through the G5 barrier. Wasn't TCU would have been 6th, 7th on your list of teams, right? I probably would have picked UTSA to upset and get into the New Year's Six and be like, oh, they beat Houston.
That is a good one, right? Like,
right.
If we go back to August,
Yeah.
and we go, okay,
rank the teams that you would
yeah,
expect.
like here, like how far down would you have gone before you got to TCU?
I almost guarantee that I would have picked UTSA before TCU.
I know.
Because
Probably.
it would have been like, they would
They
have
went 13-0. They beat Texas or
They
something.
beat Texas, Houston, and all that stuff. Like
Right.
that's so.
Right, that's funny.
Would not have been on my radar.
That's
How many wins did you have them in the magazine? Have them at?
Yeah, I'm 6 and 6.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Hell yeah.
The
it's
over
crazy.
under win total for Vegas was 6.5.
Right. Well, here's the thing. What were they
Golly.
picked in the Big 12?
Seventh.
Seventh, yeah.
So it's like no one.
There's only 10 teams.
expected.
One of those is Kansas.
Right. No
One of the other
expected
ones is
this.
West
West
Virginia.
Virginia.
No one expected this. So hell.
They have the 32nd most talented roster for 24/7 football team.
I was about to say
talent
that's one more hit that I think Bud Elliott on 247 hinted at it. TCU has a chance to do something that we have not seen in a long time, which is break the 5-star barrier.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think he said every year in the playoff era, since the 2000s, every national champion has had more than 50% of their rosters 4 and 5-star players.
Mm-hmm.
TCU is 23%.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
their
ha-
blue chip ratio is the lowest.
Yes. And so now, before anybody gets on their high horse, yes, you need 4 and 5 stars to win national championships. And that's not what I'm saying, right? When I say when people say stars don't matter, no, they do. Trust me, we have
100%.
history. But what TCU could potentially do here is simply buck a trend. And that's entertaining as hell in and of its own self, right? It's Leicester City winning the title. Not that big of an underdog story, but it is that type of story that we love to see in sports. You don't love to see the script play out every single time.
You want to know some numbers?
Go for it. Let's do it.
Georgia has 68 players on their roster that were either 4 or 5-star guys.
Mm-hmm.
15 of them were 5-star. TCU has 17 4 and 5-star players on their roster. So Georgia almost has as many 5 stars on their roster
As Georgia.
As
as
they have
TCU
4 or
has
5
4
star.
and 5 stars on the roster. Only 1 5-star on TCU's roster, 16 4-stars. And that's out of 79 players.
My
so
God.
real quick math, it's
Yeah.
62 3-stars or below playing for a national championship.
My God.
It's something that's honestly never happened.
Yeah.
To add to this craziness, TCU was unranked at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Have
Yep.
we ever seen an unranked national champion, preseason unranked national champion?
Not in this era.
Yeah.
I mean, like Cincinnati
Yeah.
was unranked last year, I believe, or one of the teams
Was
that made
Cincinnati unranked?
one of the teams
Maybe
that
so.
made the playoff last year. Maybe it was Michigan.
Whatever,
Was
Michigan.
unranked going into the year, and they lost in the first semifinal.
Right.
So
Right.
we'd have to probably go back to pre-BCS, unless I'm just thinking of something missing something obvious. I think we'd have to go back to pre-BCS.
Maybe like a
to
Notre
find
Dame
it.
or something. I
We'd,
don't
we'd
know.
have to go. Notre Dame's ranked
I was about to say
regardless.
every
Like
year.
they could bring back 2 players.
Right.
and
Yeah,
get
that's a
ranked
good
in the
point.
pre-
Third.
It's like Texas, you know.
Yeah.
And Sonny
Yeah.
spent some time talking about that in in Arizona about
Mhm.
how like TCU's trying to become one of those helmets that just gets respect
Sure.
off the bus.
Right.
You know,
like in
it's
Texas and in Notre Dame.
right,
Right.
like Texas,
right.
like Texas can go 5-7 and then be 3rd in the preseason poll the next year,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, A&M does it now, right? And
Mhm.
like TCU's trying to get into that echelon of like never being 7th in the Big 12 preseason poll again because you just assume they're going to be good.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so,
TCU's going to lose Quentin Johnson and Max Duggan, and they're going to be like, oh, unranked.
right?
Like, not
Yeah,
even
yeah, they
ranked
could win a
next
national
year.
title and
Like, how
nobody-
much you want to bet they are not going to be
Right.
ranked next
No, they
year?
will be now
They'll be-
because
but-
they've gotten this far.
Right,
and
right.
And that's what he wants to start happening, where
Yeah.
it's like we're just year in year because it's all this game's all about perception.
Yeah.
Where you start early on the year kind of determines where you are at the end of the year, right?
Right.
Like Ohio State starts at 17 and they lose that one game to Michigan. They're not in college football playoff,
Yeah.
but they started 3rd. You know, and so what we think these teams are tends to matter more, or at least as much as what they end up being.
Yeah.
And TCU wants to become one of those programs that's thought of as one of the best in the nation. Winning against Michigan helps that, obviously. But if they can go in and just play a really good game with this one, make this one tight, I think it really does kind of eliminate it for TCU. And it also hopefully helps the Big 12 perception
Mhm.
as well. Because Texas and Oklahoma leaving felt like a death nail
Sure.
for that conference a year ago.
Right.
You flash forward, July.
Yeah.
We're like, what's going to happen with the Big 12? How are they ever going to compete? What are they ever going to do without Texas and Oklahoma? Well, Oklahoma's not good. Texas is barely average, and TCU's playing for a national title game.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Who would have thought?
Tech
I
has
think
best
this was
year
a
ever.
big win for the Big 12 this
Yeah,
year. It's been a
Tech-
good 6 months.
Yeah. Tech has best year since Mike Leach.
Yeah, beat Ole Miss.
Last year's title game was 2 teams that are going to be here. So like,
Right.
yeah,
Kansas is even looking up.
Kansas, I was about to say, and then you're adding teams like Houston with potential, right?
Yep.
I'll talk about what Houston
Mm-hmm.
is now, but potential there. BYU, Cincinnati, like you have teams with momentum coming
Yeah,
in.
Gus Malzahn and UCF.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I think the Big 12's fine. They're not the SEC. They're not the Big 10, but
Sure.
that's okay.
I
I
was about
think
to say,
they're
like,
right
this
there.
This time last year, we were thinking about, we were like, oh man, Big 12, like, are they even going to exist?
Right.
Is-
Well, they just be the Big Pac-12 or
right,
whatever.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's been a great. I mean, your Mark being hired was a
Yes.
great start because that
Mhm.
guy's, I think, is a genius. I
Yeah.
think he's going to be awesome for that conference. And then TCU making this run, because
Mhm.
if this was Oklahoma or Texas, it'd look bad.
yeah. Oh, exactly. 100%.
So yeah, I think TCU's got a lot riding on it. The Big 12 stuff, the first year head coaching stuff, first team from the state of Texas to play for a national title since 2009.
Crazy.
I was born in
awesome.
'85. There's only been 2 teams from this state to play for a national title. It was the Vince Young championship 2005, and then the Colt McCoy loss in 2009.
Mhm.
There's only 6 national titles ever in the state of Texas. 4 of them are Texas. 1 of them's TCU. 1 of them's A&M. TCU's 38. A&M's 39. Since 1940 on, we've had 1 team in this state win a national title.
Yep.
And TCU's playing for one.
And at this point,
So
we're
that's a
starting
big deal.
We're starting to get to the point where it's kind of aging us, but it's like we're starting to get to the point where people don't remember that national title with Texas.
Yeah,
right?
none of
Like
these
the
high school kids.
The kids. I was about to say, yeah,
none,
the
of
recruits.
none of these recruits were alive.
Yeah.
I'd have to think. Like, I'm not very good at math. I'd say like
They'd probably be like, gosh,
like
maybe
Quentin
like
Johnson was like 4.
4.
Right.
You know,
To me, it would
4
be
or
the
5.
relationship I have to like the
I was, like,
Cowboys,
10 or
Super Bowls.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh yeah, that happened.
Right.
Like I don't remember that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not something I was raised on. So yeah, it's
You've
crazy,
just been
man.
told about it.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that seems cool. You've seen the
Like,
highlights.
that team
right?
was good back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. This is gonna be fun. You head out to LA
Sunday.
Sunday. So
That'd be awesome.
cover a national damn championship game. This is wild, man.
Yeah, still covering football January 10th.
Look at that.